June 24, 2009. 9 p.m. Los Angeles. The Staples Center. It seats 20,000 people. Championship flags, and the sort of stage that makes common folks feel little. Michael Jackson strolled through that door with a scheme. 50 shows. 50, London. A comeback so big they had to name it. This is it. Asterisk in that night, the night before. Before it all stopped. 2. Reality that were quite different. In the same building at the same time. Time one was photographed. The others wound up in legal filings. And to now, only one of those variants hit the news. Here is what most of us know about the 24th of June, 2009. Michael Jackson, 50 weeks away from his biggest concert series career, strode inside Staples Center for what was to become the most scrutinized rehearsal in musical history. He had been trained. Working, he danced. He was there. The footage that ultimately became the This Is It documentary gave glimpses of what that tour may have been like. One man who had been on stage for 40 years and still moved as the principles of physics were only recommendations. That night he was shot through dangerous. He rushed through the So he sung Earth Song in Thriller. Kenny Ortega, director of the full confirmed it production This Is It, testifying in a Los Angeles courtroom. Years afterwards, Earth Song was the last of the ever been played on a Michael Jackson song stage, not a private one, nor a rehearsal room, the Staples Center, with a full crew and lights for production. And Ortega also verified something else. That evening, after the rehearsal, was a meeting. CBS Halloween special was being debated. A fresh venture. Michael was enthusiastic about future plans, future dates, future Michael. He came that building at around 2 a.m. Kenny Ortega watched him leave. It was the last time he saw him. 14H. Michael Jackson was dead. Later, but here's what most folks never hear. Before the 24th of June. A few nights before the last rehearsal. The actual date is unknown, however. It is not. Kenny Ortega stepped inside the Staples Center and saw something that really upset him. Michael had reached the place. Shaking, not nerves, not the cold. Clearly encased in trembling layers. Confused, trying to follow the speaking about him. Ortega talked about it in his own words in Oath. I saw a Michael who frightened me. He called that night, and I quote from the court's records, very, 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 very worrying. And then he went home and mailed an email. Paul was the recipient. One of the top executives, gang aware. At AEG Live, the business that co-produces This Is It tour. In the email, Ortega told of what he had observed. He used a phrase which became one of the most heartbreaking lines in all of law. Actions. Michael Jackson, he called a missing child. When that email was read aloud in the courtroom in the 2013 civil trial, Catherine Jackson VG Live, Ortega broke. He was reading his own words, the words he had penned for years before of a man he had known for decades. What the proceedings were to be. Suspended. Let that one sink in for a second. The man who directed Michael, who had Jackson's last rehearsals, who had Watched him perform Earth Song in full production a mere hours before his death. So frightened only a few days before that he cried reading his own warning email in a courtroom. That mail was. The warning was there. And yet. But Michael Jackson really did die on June 25, 2009, the question in the civil trial. For weeks, trying to answer was easy. Why? After Ortega had sent the email following the Lost Boy warning in the email of AEG, something occurred. A gathering was called. The next day 3 persons sat together down. Kenny Ortega, President and CEO, AEG. Dr. Conrad Murray, Randy Phillips, the doctor employed by AEG and was spending $150,000 per month to oversee Michael Jackson's health during tour. That amount is worth a pause. $150,000 monthly. Murray had left his to go on the road medical practice in Las Vegas with Michael Jackson full-time. His own whole income, his whole professional. His life depended on this tour continuing. He had not yet signed a formalized contract with AEG, although the negotiations were underway. His finances, tour's future and the future. Effectively the same thing. Murray walked into that meeting with an status. Michael was okay. Michael was prepared. The tour might go on. He said. For Ortega, the man who had just seen disoriented, shaking Michael Jackson there on his own rehearsal stage was nothing to be concerned about. Phillips said little, according to testimony at the conference. Think about this. That is the company's CEO co-producing a 50-gig globe tour, seated in a room with his director, setting off alarm bells concerning the stillness and the headliner's health, or go left after around 15 minutes. No medical intervention was ordered. No independent assessment was asked. No second opinion was taken. No allowance was directed to stop production. Michael time to settle. The tour 50 shows, projecting $400 million in revenue, was punctual. And that was the meeting. The one that took place between the lost email from the boy and the last rehearsal, the one which lay between the warning and death, 15 minutes. And then. And everybody went back to work. It didn't change anything. The truth is that is the court filings show. That meeting happened and nothing came of it. Was enough to change what transpired 13 days later. Now back to June 24, last night, because this is where the two worlds collide. On the one hand, of the Staples Center, or rather in front of it, on the stage where cameras were, Michael Jackson was singing Earth Song with his whole band and crew of production, hundreds of. He was talking about a CBS Halloween special. He was talking about the future of the other side and the portions of that bidling things don't feature in the documentary. Vid. The very same system that had been months ago had told him of his predicament. Earlier still in business. The same financial apparatus. The same $15,000 doctor a month. The same manager at AEG. Framework that had been handed Ortega's. Replied by setting up a reply by email. 15-minute meeting. Same building, same night. Two totally different versions of Michael Jackson alive. At the same time, there was the artist. 50 shows, London, the comeback. The other was the man Kenny Ortega had been described as lost. It is not the question. Which one was the actual version? They both were real. Which version of any in the question is? That building was really answering. 2. Katherine Jackson in 2013. Wrongful death suit by Michael's mother. Lawsuit against AEG Live for $40 million. Damage. Billion. The main argument was not difficult. AEG brought on Conrad Murray. Murray's AEG was controlled by contract. AEG had monetary incentives. Want the tour to go ahead whichever AEG were in. Michael's condition was warned in writing by their own director that there was something wrong. The trial lasted for months. Over 50 witnesses testified. Internal emails were subpoenaed and read in open court. Some of what revealed was already out. Murray using a working propeller room anesthetic to assist sleep as Michael Jackson. Murray's fact that had been giving it all night for months. The morning of Murray gave June 25. Propofol went out of the room and came back to find Michael Jackson unconscious. Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter 2011. That verdict was prior to the civil trial. It was not in argument. What the civil trial was about to establish was something else. Was AEG Live at fault? And in the course of that civil trial, a separate came out piece of testimony that got much less attention than it warranted. Logo of AEG. CEO Randy Phillips in a separate deposition described the moment that Michael Jackson was named the headliner to the This Is It tour. Phillips stated at the press conference when Michael stepped out in front of the crowd. Phillips called him a full panic attack. And then Phillip say something different. He alleged he slapped him, Michael, and yelled at him. That's his words. In a sworn statement, on oath, I struck him. I shouted at him. The jury ruled for AEG Live in 2013 concluded that while Murray negligence, AEG was not liable, since Murray wasn't working as their employee in his official medical role. The standard of employer liability is as follows: special and demanding. And AEG's attorneys successfully argued the medical decisions Murray took were his, acting separately as a doctor. That is the bottom line, legally. It is not a moral one. Because the emails were genuine, the lost boy warning, if testimony was true, was real. The $150,000 a month payment was real. The 15-minute meeting was the slap and reel. An account of Phillips' own deposition is accurate, happened in the period before Michael Jackson walked into the Staples Center for the last time. A jury found AEG not legally liable. But the documents those proceedings produced tell a story about how the people closest to a dying man processed or failed to process what was in front of them. And that story doesn't end with a verdict. Here is what makes June 24, 2009 almost unbearable to reconstruct. There were hundreds of people in that building. Crew members, musicians, backing dancers, directors, executives, security, producing personnel. And somewhere in that building, at several points throughout the night, were those who had either witnessed Michael Jackson's decline. Received written warnings about it, or been paid to manage his health. The backing dancers subsequently reported a Michael who seemed energetic that night. Some of them did interviews regarding his final heartbreaking rehearsal. Precisely because of how normal he seems to them. Kenny Ortega, by contrary, he had seen him only days prior, trembling and swathed in blankets, unable to engage really. Both are true. Perhaps that is the most disturbing all detail of Michael Jackson was able to walk into the spotlight and becoming the artist the world knows him as, even where, in several reports, the man under the performance was struggling in ways that should have been resulted in severe medical intervention. 40 years of learning how to do just that. Perform despite the pain. Overcome fear. Entertain the crowd. What they had come for. And on June 24 he did it again. Earth Song is over. The lights go down. He climbed down off the stage, walked out of Staples Center and went in his automobile. Kenny Ortega spotted him. Go. He told it himself to the courtroom. That was the last I saw of him. A civil trial resulted in a verdict in 2013. But judgments and answers are not the same thing. The AEG was not found accountable. Murray was already in jail, but the Lost Boy email doesn't go away because of a jury finding. Ortega's statement. I saw Michael that scared me. It doesn't go away. The meeting on lasted 15 minutes and got nowhere. No. Doesn't disappear. What the trial didn't include. Behind in the court record in the public. Transcripts accessible to everybody. Is an depiction of institutional failure which no verdict can solve completely. There were Michael Jackson systems in the last months of his life. A personal physician, a production of Tour Corporation, a legal management structure. Team. None of the systems prevented what was going on. The question isn't whether any person acted with viciousness. The jury ruled that AEG was not. That's a bit tougher. How does a man with that many folks get that alone? Ortega answered it inadvertently in that courtroom. He nicknamed him Lost Boy. No. Because Michael Jackson was naive. No. Not knowing what was, he didn't know going on around him, but because he halfway between performer, the person he was, and the world expected him. Weeks before in fact he was in the dying distance, became that no one in his set appeared ready or willing to close. Earth's Song. Not the kind of tune you perform softly. It's growing. It needs something by the person singing it. The sentences are about what is gone, about loss. Ruined and gone forever. Michael wrote it in hotels for years. Rooms and on tour buses as a piece that was intended to let the viewer feel the weight of mass injury. Together, it was one of the most theatrical works in the terrible history of the highest ages. Fire Wind Machines, the stage that moved about him. On June 24, 2009, sometime around midnight or shortly after Michael Jackson stood on sang it on the Staples Center Stage 1 time. Kenny Ortega confirmed it under oath. That was final tune. Something nearly 2 on the nose around it. The man who had lived to take Career demanding the world to hear. To what was taken away. Doing a Our song about lost beyond recovery. Before he was the thing the world is. Would lament for the next decade. He didn't realize it was the last. No one knew in that building. That's the part that you can't shake. Not the ruling. Not the emails, not the $40 billion lawsuit. Only he didn't know. He got out of the Staples Center at 2 a.m. Thinking about London, certainly. Probably thinking about the CBS special. Thinking about the next rehearsal. And 14 hours later the world knew what happened. What was happening in the building. It's two sides. All the meantime there's a version of June 24, 2009 that is. Easy. Michael Jackson's final practice, a night of incredible performances, a taste of what the tour will be like. May have been. And then there is the Lost in Court Docs version. Boy, panic attack 15-minute meeting. I saw a Michael that scared me. Both the two versions were in the same building, same night, same people. One of them was photographed. The courts were left with the other. What you do with that depends on what question you are seeking to answer. If the question is whether the music was still to there, it was. Every report of that. The final rehearsal proves it. If the question is if the surrounding systems him failed, the paper shows the answer is yes. Not for want of conspiracy, not out of malice, but when the financial stakes in human point away from each other, the welfare. History tells us again and again what one is likely to win. Michael Jackson has died. The Staples Center at 2 a.m. June. Never played again after the 25th of 2009. Earth Song was the last song. The people. The dancers that were there that night. The crew, the musicians have supplied interviews along the years telling of that last practice, the electricity in the room, what the stage looked like, how he said. Many of them say it was the finest evenings of the whole production. That night they went home thinking weeks out. London. Kenny Ortega got home and realized something they didn't want. He had seen the Michael, the other one, the one in the email from the shuddering blanket night with the phrase lost boy. He'd been sitting in a 15-minute meeting that went nowhere. And he'd seen Michael walk out of the building at 2 in the morning. And a creature inside him. He later said that he felt the weight. Then he actually could that moment express he didn't collect him. Had no medical authority to stop him. There was no system to anybody to say, not tonight. We have to take care of this first. There was just a man walking to his car and a director watching him walk away. 14 hours later at 12:22 p.m. June 25, 2009 at 9:11 p.m. Call made from a mansion in Holy Hills, L.A. Dr. Conrad Murray had found Michael Jackson not breathing. He was declared deceased at UCLA Medical Center at 2:26 p.m. The toxicology found numerous report propol benzodiazepines in his bloodstream. Drugs which have no business being administered at a bedroom. Drugs needing hospital quality monitoring device. Murray's drugs he had been taking 4 months now at Michael's own wish. Yes, but also without the safeties that any bona fide medical ingestion of these drugs would have called for. That's the last detail. The court documents tell us. Not malice, not conspiracy, just a string of decisions. Some for cash, some made out of tiredness, some because of the machine around Michael Jackson had too much steam to halt. For a warning email to any individual converged on the June 25, 2009. And the truth, as it nearly always is, turned out to be a whole lot more complex and the headlines hurt more than anything.